Hey yo guys, we'll be back with another video. You feel me? Please like, subscribe, turn on post notifications, and I do hope you enjoy this video. Without further ado, let's get into it. This video is called Great People Who Weren't Good People. I saw a couple of interesting people on here actually, so I'm actually interested to see who he's going to be talking about, because there are a lot of great people in American history, or just history in general, I guess, and they were horrible people. You know what I'm saying? It's like an athlete. LeBron James, man, LeBron James, man, he a real good athlete, man, probably one of the greatest of all time, if not the greatest of all time, but man, he does beat on his wife and kids, and obviously it's an example. I'm not saying LeBron does that, it's just an example, but you know what I'm saying? And that's how it really be sometimes. So let's see what's up.
Great people who did some not so great things, like very not great. You'll see what I mean. First up, Dr. Seuss. Turns out the man behind Green Eggs and Ham served up some seriously questionable behavior on the side. First, let's talk about Theodore Geisel's idea of loyalty. Yes, that's his real name. While his first wife Helen was battling a debilitating illness,
he ended up. Yep, I heard about that. Yep.
Geisel decided that was a perfect time to have an affair.
Nah, that's
because
crazy.
Nothing says in sickness and in health like breaking your vows, right? Helen eventually discovered the affair, and the devastation drove her to write a heartbreaking note before tragically ending her life. And what did Dr. Seuss do in the wake of this tragedy? He married his mistress less than a year later.
That was crazy.
That's one way to process grief. But it doesn't stop
I remember
there.
hearing about that.
Before he was riding.
Well, I don't know why I don't know why I'm saying. Yeah, I remember that. Like I was there for when it happened. Yeah, man, I remember. Man, that was a crazy time. Nah, but I do remember hearing about this. I think I heard it off like TikTok or some shit.
Faxes and sneezes.
You know how it would be.
Geisel had a darker artistic side. During World War II, he turned out a series of political cartoons that were blatantly racist, particularly towards Japanese Americans.
Yeah,
I've been using Grammarly for 3 years, and I can't imagine my work life without it.
Dr. Seuss, he might really be one of the best authors of all time. He might be like a top 10 author. You know, definitely was big on a lot of the books we read and shows, maybe, but yeah, he had some problems.
It's hard to reconcile that with the guy who taught us that a person's a person no matter how small. And let's not forget the contradictions. This is the same man who later wrote stories about equality and acceptance, like the Sneetches, which carried a moral about rejecting prejudice. So, was it personal growth or PR redemption? We'll never know. But Horton hearing a Who suddenly feels a lot less heartwarming when you know what Geisel thought of real people. Next up, Einstein. The fellow who made E=mc² a household equation.
Now he a horrible person for doing that in the first place, man. Hey, anyone who made math more than the basics, not even the basics, because there is some math that we do need, but anyone who made more than like pretty much the basic stuff, you know, measurements, adding, subtracting, dividing, etc., long division, they not too great. You know what I'm saying? Like, no.
He wrote the playbook for modern physics. But while he was busy unraveling...
Because now I'm in school. Well, I don't take math no more. I finished my math. But now I'm in school taking freaking math and listening to BS, or I was listening to BS that I don't use this in my day-to-day life.
Mysteries of the universe.
And you know what I hate the most? I'm sorry, but you know what I hate the most? I hate when adults, or especially teachers, be like, you do use this in your day-to-day life. You might not realize it. But, and then they try to compare it to like a sport you play or something. Like, for me, well, when you box, you know, to get this angle and to do this, you gotta, you know, you have to do this, and you gotta subtract, and you gotta calculate it. Maybe you didn't do that, but, you know, naturally when you see it, like, no, stop. You're not gonna tell me how I think when I'm in the ring. Trust me, when I get an angle, I just get it. I'm not there thinking like, well, let's see, it's about like this. If I come to this angle, I can throw these punches. If I go to this angle, I can only throw like 2. No, I'm not doing that. No, stop it. Like, don't tell me what I'm thinking. You know what I'm saying? No, that is not how that works.
His personal life was less scientific genius.
But when you play basketball and you shoot the hoop, you gotta calculate. If
she wasn't just a spouse; she was also a physicist in her own right.
You think LaMelo is freaking thinking about the calculations when he does a step back, 2 foot in the air, like he's got AirPods in? You think he's thinking about that? No.
Historians believe Maleva might have contributed to his early breakthroughs, including his groundbreaking theories.
And if he is,
so how did Einstein
that explains a lot.
By treating her like an unpaid lab assistant, of course. While his name was going on papers and awards, hers wasn't even in the footnotes.
Dang.
And when their marriage started to crumble, Einstein did not try to fix things. Instead, he handed Mileva a list of conditions for staying married. This masterpiece of romance included demands like, "You will not expect any intimacy from me," and "You will keep the bedroom and study tidy." Because nothing says marital bliss like a man too busy for affection but very concerned about dusting. Eventually, she had enough and left. And Einstein, did he reflect, grow, and try to be better?
Nope.
Nope, he turned around and married his cousin, Elsa. Yup, the same guy who reshaped the way we see the cosmos, thought that keeping it all in the family was a perfect idea. Then, while married to Elsa, he didn't quite decide to walk a straight line. He had multiple affairs, often admitting to them in letters as if fidelity was some optional social experiment. Sure, the guy was a genius, but evidently, intelligence and emotional maturity are not related in any way. While he was redefining physics, he was also redefining what it meant to be a horrible partner. Winston Churchill, you know him, the cigar-smoking, speech-giving British leader who helped save the world in World War II. His never-surrender attitude kept Britain going when things looked hopeless. And honestly, he deserves credit for being a major reason the Nazis didn't win. But here's the thing. Churchill wasn't all speeches and glory. He made some really questionable decisions, and they weren't exactly tiny mistakes. Take the Bengal famine of 1943, for example.
Oof.
Millions of people in India died.
I couldn't imagine being this skinny. Because when you're this skinny, literally, like, the littlest thing can break your bone. Like, being this skinny, if someone was to just punch you, it might not even be that hard, but that could literally break a rib. Like, it could just be a little boom, you know, and that could really, like, actually hurt you, like, damage you. Because, like, look. Like, I bet you it would only take me less than a minute to break this guy's ribs right here. If I really wanted to, it'd probably take me less than a minute. Because it's just all there. Like, that's bad, bro. That's real bad. That's sad.
And Churchill had the
That's
power
really
to help.
sad.
But
And he
instead
didn't.
of sending food, he redirected supplies to Europe and let grain rot in ports.
That is
His
crazy.
excuse? He blamed the famine on Indians, quote-unquote, breeding like rabbits. That's not just insensitive, that is straight up cruel.
Yeah, that's
While
crazy.
people were dying, their leader basically said, "Not my problem."
No,
Then
he
there's
didn't
the Tony
basically say
Pandy
that. He
riots
did
in
say that pretty
1910,
much.
Back when Churchill was Home
That's
Secretary.
basically what he said.
Coal miners in Wales.
This may be the last ad you see.
Hey, you know what's funny to me, though?
Visit your favorite
Bro,
website.
all these countries that be complaining about, you can't have this many kids and you can't have this many of this gender and all that stuff. All those countries are crying right now. Like, the leaders of those countries are literally crying right now, wishing they never
But
made
okay, and
most of that stuff a thing, because they are struggling right now when it comes down to population and everything. It's like hell in some of those places because they wanted to be on that type of time. And now people, because they already don't really like you like that, they probably not really even doing it. That's
People
why
sent in
Japan was
actual
calling for the
troops.
black people to come
These
down there
weren't violent rebels. They were just
to
workers
just
trying
have
to survive.
kids.
And the result
'Cause they
was
needed
violent
it.
clashes that left a lasting
They
scar in
needed
the
it.
community. Maybe sending in soldiers to deal with
They need
peaceful
more
strikers was not the brightest
population.
idea. And let's not forget Dresden in 1945. Churchill ordered
So,
the
I
bombing
know,
of the German
boy,
city,
if I
which
had the
killed
money, I
tens
sure
of
would have went down
thousands
there
of civilians.
myself.
The city was practically leveled, and historians say it didn't serve much of a military
Boy, I
purpose.
would have had me a little lineage over there, boy. A bunch of little warriors down there, boy.
It looked more like revenge.
I would have
than
came back when
strategy.
they got to a certain
Here's
age,
the
boy.
deal.
I would have took them
Churchill's
back
leadership
here.
in
I
World
would
War
have trained
II
them
was
up. Boy,
incredible.
it would have been the best
And it's why he's remembered as a
athletes,
hero.
whatever sport they
But
wanted
he
to
also
do
made
of all
decisions
time.
that caused a lot of harm. He wasn't perfect. No one is. It's just funny how the history books don't spend that much time on this stuff.
At least one of them.
Moving
will be.
on to Thomas Edison, the so-called Wizard
Okay,
of Menlo
Thomas
Park,
Edison. Let's see.
who's credited with inventing just
What you
about
gonna
everything.
say about my boy
The
Tom?
light bulb, phonograph, movies. But here's the thing. Edison's real talent wasn't inventing. It was marketing. Let's start with the light bulb. Edison didn't actually invent it. No,
I
he
actually
just
heard about
improved an
that.
existing design and got the patent. A genius? Sure. Original? Not so much. And this wasn't a one-time thing. He did it over and over again, taking credit for the work of people like Joseph Swan, who'd been working on light bulbs before Edison even got started. And then there's Nikola Tesla, the poor guy who made the mistake of working for Edison. Edison promised Tesla $50,000 for fixing his machines, but when Tesla actually did it, Edison laughed it off and said, "Oh, that was just a joke." Can you imagine doing months of work only to get hit with, "Haha, just kidding"? But the real drama
I'd probably
was
kill him, I ain't
the
gonna
war
lie.
of the currents.
In GTA, of course.
Edison was pushing for his direct current DC system, while Tesla's alternating current AC was gaining traction.
Me?
So what did Edison do? He went full petty mode. He spread lies about AC being dangerous and even electrocuted animals, including an elephant, just to make his point. Yep, the guy who brought us the
Wow,
light bulb
alright.
also brought us public animal electrocutions. What a legacy. So, was Edison smart? Absolutely. But let's not ignore the fact that he was also a ruthless businessman who didn't mind
And a
stepping on
horrible
a few
person,
necks.
sounds like.
Or electrocuting a few animals.
Hey, I guess but they be saying that about these business people, man. Sometimes they gotta, you see how they be in the movies sometimes, man. That's real life. Sometimes you gotta step on a couple people, break a couple people's hands just to get where you at, I guess.
Well,
That's
see
not
what
morally right, but
Next up, Gandhi. The man, the myth.
now I've
Mahatma.
heard some stuff about him,
Preached
actually. I ain't gonna lie.
nonviolence, self-discipline, and being the change. But his personal life
He's
and
a
beliefs
very
didn't
big,
always match the glossy image that history handed us.
Very big,
Let's start at home.
I
Literally.
don't know what you call him.
Gandhi's spiritual
very-
experiments
very big.
involved sleeping next to naked young women, including his teenage grandniece, to test his chastity.
All right.
Because apparently controlling your urges is easier with your relatives in bed. Unsurprisingly, his wife, Kasturba, wasn't a fan of his methods, or his controlling behavior. When she had
Who would be?
pneumonia, Gandhi refused to let her take penicillin because it wasn't natural. She died. Meanwhile, when malaria struck Gandhi himself, he took medicine without hesitation. Funny how his principles only applied when someone else was suffering. Then there's South Africa. While Gandhi fought for Indian rights, his opinions about black Africans were shockingly racist. For a man who preached equality, his
I
actions
heard, yeah,
suggested
I
he
can't
wasn't
rock with that,
interested in
bro.
applying
Hating
that
on my
philosophy
people.
universally. And let's talk politics. Gandhi's insistence
Gandhi really, I think he was one of those people where not only I guess you could say he was a hypocrite because you can't say like, no, you cannot take this medicine. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think Mormons maybe, I forget what Christianity religion does it better, but I know there's Christianity people, or not Christianity, but certain parts of Christianity, whatever, Mormon, whatever it is, that are better at that. You know what I'm saying? They'll be like, hey, we're not taking this because we don't believe in that. We believe in praying to the Lord. And no matter who gets sick, whether it's them, somebody else, they don't care. They will not break it. You know what I'm saying? It takes a lot to break them out of that mindset. Versus him, yeah, that's pretty hypocritical. When it's you want to save your life, but when it's somebody else, you want to be or this. No, we will not do that because that's pretty hypocritical. And not only that, I think really he was just fighting for Indian rights because he's an Indian man. And in that time, it was very rough for India when it came down to rights and having their own little thing going. So I think more so Gandhi was more so of a, I'm trying to help my people type of thing. Just like Martin Luther King. Martin Luther King did want the world to be equal, yes. He wanted the world for whites and blacks to be able to be friends and together. But he was mainly fighting. Well, he was fighting for black people. He wasn't fighting for other races. He wanted us to all be equal and be together, yes. But he was really fighting for black people because that was just the time we was in. Was he a racist? Not that I know of. But that's kind of what Gandhi's doing. Just the only difference is he's a little
strict
racist.
nonviolence during India's independence movement wasn't as noble as it sounds. While British forces were
But
massacring civilians,
all of these dudes have some sort of bad background a lot of the time. They have something that's a little fishy about them. Most of them. Not all of them, but
Gandhi
a good
demanded
amount.
restraint. Even when fighting back might have saved
Maybe
lives.
50-50.
Some critics argue that his inflexible ideals prolonged suffering.
But they did a lot
making him as much
for
of a
their
roadblock
people.
as a leader.
And
So, was Gandhi the saint he's made out to be? Not even close.
no.
He had ideas that changed the world, but behind the slogans and spinning wheels was a man whose flaws couldn't be ignored. So, Mother Teresa. You've probably
And it
heard
doesn't
that she-
necessarily mean they were bad people. I mean, if you're racist, yeah, you're a bad person, but it doesn't necessarily mean they're bad people. Some of these people, it just they had flaws that didn't make them the best, like how they picture it to be. Like they were just these geniuses and they were this and that, when really they had a dark side, just like almost, all of these people.
She's the saintly figure who helped the poor and the sick, right? Well, not so fast. There's a lot of stuff in her story.
You see how they doing Mr. Beast? Mr. Beast was super big. Everybody loves him. And now they trying to get him up out of here for some weird stuff they said.
First
I don't
off,
know.
her homes for the
I haven't
dying.
heard about it recently,
These
so it
places
must be
were
done.
supposed to be about giving sick people care, but in reality, they were more like suffering warehouses. People were lying on cots in pain, and there was little to no medicine to help them feel better. Needles reused over and over.
Ooh,
And
that's
Mother
nasty.
Teresa, she thought this was a good thing. She literally said, "There is something beautiful in seeing the poor accept their lot, to suffer it like Christ's passion." Sounds wonderful, in theory, but not so much for the people actually screaming in agony. Then there's money. There's always money. She was amazing at fundraising. Rich people couldn't hand over their cash fast enough. But where'd all that money go? Not to improving those homes. Millions of dollars disappeared, tucked away in secret accounts. A former volunteer once said there was no transparency. Nobody knew where the money was going. That doesn't exactly scream responsible charity. She also had a few sketchy friendships. She accepted millions from Charles Keating, a guy who stole from elderly people. When someone pointed this out, she didn't give the money back. Instead, she wrote to the court defending him, saying, "I do not know anything about Mr. Keating's business dealings." She knew enough to cash his check. Her advice to poor women? She went to places where families were starving and told them to keep having more kids. Imagine struggling to feed the kids you already have and being told it's your job to have more. Not super helpful. Having said all that, Mother Teresa did dedicate her life to helping the poor. She gave up personal comforts and worked in some of the hardest conditions imaginable. She brought global attention to the struggles of the poorest people on earth. Her methods were questionable and sometimes harmful, but her commitment was something worth recognizing. Let's call her a mixed bag. Next is John Lennon, Mr. Beatles himself. The guy who told the world to give peace a chance while seemingly giving no one in his personal life the same courtesy. For a man who preached love, harmony, and nonviolence, his real-life actions tell a very different story. First, let's start with his violent streak. Lennon openly admitted to physically abusing women, including his first wife Cynthia. He confessed in a 1980 Playboy interview that he was a quote-unquote hitter, and had spent much of his early life consumed by uncontrollable anger. Cynthia endured years of emotional and physical abuse, which Lennon later tried to dismiss as part of his younger self.
All I'm gonna say
But
is, there's
let's
no
be
way you
real,
love
there's
somebody so
no
much you're
excuse
gonna
for
let them
that.
abuse you, man.
And then there's
no
how he
way.
treated his son Julian. While Lennon sang about peace and understanding, he openly neglected Julian after his divorce. In fact, Lennon admitted that he had practically no relationship with Julian, and callously referred to him as an unplanned mistake,
Wow.
compared to Sean, his planned son with Yoko Ono. Imagine being a child and hearing your father say that, publicly. That's not just bad parenting, it's emotional cruelty on another level. But Lennon's hypocrisy didn't stop there. He spent the late 1960s and early 1970s preaching world peace, but behind closed doors, his behavior was anything but peaceful. For example, his infamous 1974 Lost Weekend period, where he separated from Yoko, was riddled with drunken brawls and violent outbursts. At one point, he got into a physical altercation with a waitress
Telling
at
y'all,
the
man, these people
Troubadour
don't be
Club
that
in Los
good.
Angeles. After being kicked
They do so much for the world. It's like, dang, like they were good people. Like they did this and this and that. It's like, dang, when you see it, they're like, dang, these were some good people. But then you get into their background and you're like, okay, 50-50.
kicked out for heckling performers.
Now some of these weren't that bad, but
Yeah. The
I
peace
digress.
icon punched a waitress. So yeah, he gave us music
Well-
that inspired the
now I'm thinking about it. I guess most of them were racist and being a cheater on your sickly wife. I guess they all were pretty bad. The only one that wasn't that bad probably was it Thomas Edison, or I think that was the
world,
one.
but
Yeah,
his personal life
I guess
often
that wasn't
undermined
that
everything he
bad.
claimed to stand for.
I mean it was
He
bad,
was not a
but
saint.
it wasn't the worst.
MLK, Martin Luther King Jr.
Oh, here we
The
go. I
man,
gotta
the
hear about
legend,
this
and
one.
the one whose "I Have a Dream" speech.
I've heard some
totally
stuff about him. I just
redefined
didn't know. I just don't know
But
if it's
as
true or
we've
not.
seen,
But we better
legends
find out.
aren't perfect. That doesn't mean that MLK wasn't a hero. He was just human.
Definitely was.
With a few messy chapters in an otherwise
See, I told y'all. I'm telling y'all, everybody got, not everybody, but a lot of people got some some dark stuff.
extraordinary story. Let's start with his PhD dissertation. In 1991, it was revealed that a few parts of it were plagiarized. And not in a, like,
Okay,
whoops, I
that's
forgot a
not
footnote
bad.
kind of way.
At Job Corps, you can work
That's
towards a
not that bad. I
career.
ain't gonna-
Job Corps provides free
I don't think
schooling, free
plagiarizing.
tuition.
I mean,
free
he
housing.
should have gave credit.
Entire
but I don't think
sections
it's
were lifted
too,
from
too,
scholars.
too crazy.
Like Paul Tillich and Edgar Brightman.
But he should
Now,
have
in
definitely
MLK's
said.
defense, academic standards back then were more like vague suggestions. Boston University investigated and decided to keep his degree intact, basically saying that he changed the world, so let's call it a mulligan. Okay, fair enough. Then there's the FBI, led by J. Edgar Hoover, who apparently made MLK his personal obsession. They wiretapped him, followed him, and claimed he had extramarital affairs. Hoover probably had ulterior motives.
I heard about it.
Like being a colossal
I think my dad doesn't like MLK.
racist. But the FBI didn't just pull these allegations out of thin air. Records suggest that MLK's personal life had its complicated moments, including relationships outside its marriage.
Yep, I heard
Not
about that.
ideal,
Yep.
but also not exactly an uncommon story
Yeah,
for men
it's not
under
bad.
immense pressure
Not
and
bad,
in
not
positions of
bad.
power.
Not bad.
But here's where it gets interesting. None of this
Not that
dims his
bad.
legacy. If anything, it makes it more remarkable. MLK wasn't some untouchable saint. He was a flawed, complicated man who still managed to move mountains. Alright, JFK.
See? Even stuff like that, right? Not that bad, but cheating and plagiarizing isn't necessarily good. But it isn't the worst thing on this list. Like I said, there's a couple on here that really just weren't that bad. Like Thomas Edison. I don't think that one was that bad. Was it bad? Most definitely. That's messed up. Just like MLK. Yeah, it's messed up because not only did you not give credit to the people, but you also were cheating on your wife, which you shouldn't do. But it's not the worst thing. You know what I'm saying?
The guy
Like some of
whose
the other
face is
people
on
in
half
here
the
did.
schools and airports in America.
But
But
it ain't good.
maybe it shouldn't be. Let's talk about the affairs. These weren't just harmless flings, but
But
a
it isn't
pattern
really
of
nothing that
reckless
will make
infidelity.
you hate him,
Marilyn
you know,
Monroe was the most infamous, but JFK's list of lovers extended to multiple
or
women,
dislike him,
including Judith Campbell Exner, who had ties to mob boss Sam Giancana. Think about that. The President of the United States, during one of the most tense periods in global history, was sleeping with someone linked to organized crime. This wasn't a personal indiscretion, it was a potential national security threat. Then there's the sheer volume. Secret Service agents reported smuggling women into the White House, some barely vetted. Again, not a lapse in judgment, but a systemic abuse of power. While JFK was supposed to be focused on the Cuban Missile Crisis or civil rights, his attention was frequently elsewhere. Behavior that undermines the trust and integrity expected of a leader. His affairs turned what was otherwise a celebrated legacy into one mired in questions about his judgment. We'll talk about Walt Disney, the guy who created the happiest place on earth.
See, not that bad.
is,
What he did
unless
wasn't
you
that
happen
bad.
to work for him or share different political
If anything, that might have
beliefs.
been the least
On the
worst one.
surface, he's all about magic and family values.
Yeah, but he was
dig a little
racist
deeper, and
and,
suddenly
yeah.
things get less bibbity bobbity boo and
Yeah,
more.
things start getting a little dark.
Yikes. First up, his ties to the Motion Picture Alliance for the Preservation of American Ideals. A far-right group so subtle they might as well have carried flashing neon signs that read, "We hate communists," and maybe a few other groups too. This wasn't a casual, "oh, I attended one meeting" kind of situation. Walt was a proud member of this group, which was notorious for its staunch anti-communist stance. And by staunch, I mean they equated anyone wanting fair labor practices with a Soviet spy. The group also pushed anti-Semitic rhetoric, which, if you're running an empire based on inclusivity and imagination, isn't a good look. And speaking of workers, the 1941 animator strike showed Walt's true colors. When his employees asked for better pay and working conditions, he didn't sprinkle magic pixie dust on their demands. Instead, he called them communists and radicals, then made it his mission to ruin their careers. Think of him as the original villain in the fight for workers' rights, but instead of twirling a mustache, he sicked the House Un-American Activities Committee on anyone who dared to cross him. Walt's approach to unions and his far-right affiliations paint a picture that's a lot darker than the one on Main Street, USA. Yeah, he gave us Mickey Mouse, but for his workers, this could not have been further from a fairy tale ending. Anyway, YouTube thinks that you'll like this.
Anyway, even more Alexander Human, that's cool. Anyway, guys, I do hope you enjoyed the video. Tell me what you guys think about all these situations, and yeah, please like, subscribe, turn on post notifications, and I hope you enjoyed the video. I'm out.